Imagine standing on a street corner where the air doesn't just carry the scent of the sea, but the heavy, metallic tang of coal smoke and the rhythmic thrum of a world being reborn. Can you hear the frantic clatter of iron-rimmed wheels on cobblestone, or the distant whistle of a steam engine pulling the weight of a continent? What does it feel like to stand in the richest, most industrious city in America at the very moment the old world finally surrenders to the new? Today, we are stepping back into Philadelphia in the 1880s. Through the lens of old maps, archival photographs, and the meticulous records of the Centennial era, AI has reconstructed the workshop of the world in its prime. This is not the quiet colonial town of Benjamin Franklin, but a thundering, soot-stained metropolis of nearly 1 million souls. I am your guide, and together we are going to walk through a city that is currently inventing the future. To understand Philadelphia in 1880, you have to visualize it as a massive grid ironed out between two rivers, the deep commercial Delaware to the east and the winding, scenic Schuylkill to the west. While the city was founded on the Delaware docks, by the 1880s, the center of gravity is shifting. The city is bursting out of its 18th century skin, fueled by the massive wealth of the Pennsylvania Railroad and the coal mines to the north. Our walk today will take us from the shadow of the world's tallest masonry structure at City Hall, down the bustling corridor of Market Street, through the squalor and splendor of the riverfront, and finally out to the lush, sprawling grounds of Fairmount Park. We begin our journey in the literal and figurative heart of the city, Penn Square. The first thing you notice is the noise, a deafening symphony of chisels hitting marble. Looming over us is the unfinished shell of Philadelphia City Hall. It is a mountain of white granite and marble, a sprawling Second Empire masterpiece that has been under construction for 9 years already and won't be finished for another 20. The air here is thick with stone dust that coats your clothes in a fine white powder. You can see hundreds of stonemasons perched on scaffolding, looking like ants against the massive clock tower that is slowly rising to meet the clouds. This building is more than just a seat of government. It is a statement of ego. Philadelphia is currently the largest city in land area in the world, and it wants a building to match. As we dodge a horse-drawn wagon carrying a massive marble slab, you might spot a well-dressed clerk in a tall silk hat arguing with a foreman over a blueprint. This site is the crossroads of the city's political machine, where fortunes are made in city contracts and whispered deals. In a century, this dusty construction site will be the finished landmark we know today, but the soot of the industrial age will have turned this white marble almost entirely black before it is eventually cleaned for the modern era. Walking east, away from the dust of Penn Square, we enter the chaos of Market Street. The sun struggles to pierce through a forest of overhead wires, telegraph lines and the brand new electrical cables that are beginning to web the sky. The ground beneath our feet is a treacherous mix of Belgian blocks, mud and horse manure. The smell is a pungent cocktail of animal waste, roasting coffee from nearby warehouses, and the sharp sulfur of coal fires. You have to keep your eyes sharp. The street is a lawless tangle of omnibuses, private carriages and heavy freight drays, all competing for inches of space. Market Street is the city's commercial spine. To your left and right, the great department stores are rising, massive palaces of consumption like Wanamaker's, which occupies an old freight depot. Inside, the 1880s shopper is experiencing a revolution. Fixed prices, electric lights, and pneumatic tubes whisking cash to central counting rooms. You see a middle-class woman in a restrictive corset and a bustled silk dress stepping out of a carriage, her gloved hand clutching a parasol, while just feet away, a ragged newsie shouts the headlines of the Philadelphia Inquirer about the latest railroad strike. This vibrant, messy merchant row will eventually be sanitized into the retail district of the 20th century. But for now, it is the raw, beating heart of American capitalism. We turn south now, cutting through the narrow, dark alleys of the 7th Ward. The transition is jarring. The grand marble facades disappear, replaced by cramped, red brick row houses that seem to lean against one another for support. The air grows stagnant here. The honey dippers or waste collectors haven't been by in weeks, and the open gutters run with grey wash water. This is one of the oldest African-American neighborhoods in the country, a place of immense struggle and profound community. You see a laundress hanging white linens across a narrow courtyard, the steam from her wash basin rising into the damp afternoon air. In these shadows, life is lived on the stoops. You hear the rhythmic thump of a cobbler's hammer and the chatter of children playing with hoops in the dirt. These streets are the focus of social reformers like W.E.B. Du Bois, who will soon document the systemic challenges faced by the residents here. It is a neighborhood of trinity houses, one room per floor, stacked 3 high. Many of these humble brick shells will survive into the 21st century, becoming highly coveted historic real estate. But today, they are the front lines of a city struggling to house its working poor amidst an industrial boom. As we continue east, the ground begins to slope down toward the Delaware River, and the character of the city shifts again. We are entering the Old City, the neighborhood of the founders. Here, the 1880s feels like an intrusion upon the 1770s. We pass Independence Hall, its red brick looking modest compared to the gargantuan City Hall we saw earlier. In 1880, the State House is already a shrine, but it's surrounded by the grime of a working port. The cracks in the Liberty Bell are already a point of fascination for the tourists who come here in their stiff collars and wool suits to touch the relic of a revolution that feels increasingly distant. This is the banking district, the Wall Street of Philadelphia. The buildings here are heavy, neoclassical temples of finance made of dark stone. You see messengers in caps sprinting between the Merchants' Exchange and the banks, carrying banknotes and stock tips. The men here move with a different kind of urgency, the quiet, cold urgency of capital. This area will remain the historic core of the city, protected by future generations. But in the 1880s, there is no national park here. It is a functioning, soot-covered neighborhood where history is simply the backdrop for the day's ledger entries. Finally, we reach the waterfront at Delaware Avenue. The view is blocked by a literal wall of masts and steam funnels. This is a forest of timber and iron. The noise is a cacophony of shouting stevedores, hissing steam winches, and the low lowing of cattle being loaded onto ships bound for Europe. The smell of the river is overwhelming, a thick, oily muck of sewage, salt, and industrial chemicals. Giant wooden piers groan under the weight of Pennsylvania coal, locomotives, and textiles. Philadelphia is the port that builds the world, and you can see it in the sheer volume of crates marked for Liverpool, Havana, and Hong Kong. Amidst the chaos of the docks, you see an immigrant family just stepping off a ferry, looking bewildered. They carry everything they own in wooden trunks and cloth bundles, staring up at the skyline of a city that promises both liberation and grueling labor. The waterfront is a place of transition and grit. In the decades to come, these massive wooden finger piers will rot away or be replaced by concrete, and eventually, the great Interstate 95 will cut a trench through this area, severing the city from its river. But today, the river is the only reason the city exists at all. To escape the heat and the stench of the docks, we take a streetcar, pulled by a team of straining horses, out to the northwest toward Fairmount Park. As we move away from the river, the air clears and the grey city gives way to a brilliant, engineered green. We arrive at the Fairmount Waterworks, a marvel of 19th century engineering that looks like a Greek temple sitting on the edge of the Schuylkill River. The sound of rushing water over the dam is a relief after the roar of Market Street. This park was the site of the Great Centennial exhibition just 4 years ago, in 1876. Many of the massive glass and iron pavilions still stand, ghostly reminders of the World's Fair that introduced the telephone and the typewriter to the public. You see families picnicking on the grass, women in wide-brimmed hats tilting their heads as they watch rowing crews, the Schuylkill Navy, slice through the water in long wooden shells. This is the city's lungs. It is the pride of Philadelphia, a park system designed to protect the city's drinking water from the very factories that make the city rich. Most of what you see here, the waterworks, the winding paths, the rowing clubs, will look remarkably similar in the 21st century, preserved as a monument to Victorian civic pride. Now, let the 1880s fade. The horse-drawn carriages vanish, replaced by the hum of electric cars. The forest of telegraph wires is buried underground. The coal smoke clears, revealing the white marble of a finished city hall. When we look at Philadelphia today, the layers of the 1880s are everywhere if you know where to look. The massive grid we walked still dictates the flow of traffic. The red brick row houses of the 7th Ward are now expensive homes in Society Hill and Queen Village. The great department stores like Wanamaker's still stand, though their interiors have changed names and purposes. Independence Hall has been scrubbed clean of its industrial soot, standing in a manicured park that the 1880s resident wouldn't recognize. Yet, the workshop of the world remains in the city's DNA, in the sturdy architecture, the sprawling park system, and the relentless, gritty spirit of its people. Philadelphia in the 1880s was a city of violent contrasts. Incredible wealth and desperate poverty, pristine parks and toxic rivers, ancient history and terrifyingly fast innovation. It was a city that wasn't afraid to build the biggest, the fastest, and the loudest. Thank you for walking through time with me. This reconstruction is just one layer of the many lives this city has lived. If you could walk these streets in 1880, would you find the noise and progress exhilarating, or would you miss the quiet of the past? Which city and which era should we reconstruct next? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to keep traveling through the layers of history. I'll see you in the next century.